in obedience to Jesus. But before that, I know you had recently graduated in 2014, 2015. So talk to me, what was your next steps after college? The Army didn't work out. God closed that door, but he made it clear, hey, this is ministry. That's how I want to serve you. So what happened next?
So after that, once I realized, okay, what my call for ministry was, as I was graduating, it was like, okay, what's the next, where do I work? Where do I stay? So for me, I just felt called to that area because for me, if I go back home right now, there's no accountability. At this time, there's no one who I feel like in that time can continue to pour into me or help shape me for the call, mold me for the call. Yeah. So it's gonna be easy for me to fall off. If I go back home to Toledo right now, and nothing against anyone in there right now, but I was just like, I could go home and I could go get a girl pregnant out of wedlock. As long as I take care of the kid and take care of her, no one will hold me to the standard of like, yeah, you should have got married first. Like I'll still be seen as good.
You don't think your parents would have done that, or
no,
your siblings or anything?
No.
Were they married when they had you? I know.
Yeah, my parents were married before they had me. Yeah, for sure.
So you grew up in a two-parent household?
Yep, grew up in a two-parent household. So no one would have bashed me or anything like that. I could have been going out to the club, kicking it, fornicating, all this other stuff. But living worldly, but I still would have been good on paper because I got the degree. I got now that I had a job. Again, it looked good on paper, no crimes, none of that stuff. Yeah. But I was like, to actually hold me accountable and push myself forward, to be with a group of men, to have a church home where I feel like that fit me in that time period, it was best to stay there. So the first thing was just finding a job. So,
and you already knew this. God gave you wisdom about, hey, it's best for you to stay in the area.
When I looked at it, I'm just like, this is best. This is where a lot of my friends are at right now. And they're in my community, they're going hard for Christ. So it's me and it's other black men going hard for Christ, whereas go back home, who else is going hard for Christ back at home? Okay. So it's like, at least at this time, this was the best for me. So it's like, okay, find a job here. And then as I said, I was supposed to be possibly planning a church. Like it was gonna be like, okay, am I gonna start my own church? Am I gonna plant a seed church of another church? So it was looking more so like where I was getting built up to, I was gonna plant a campus of Span, maybe back in Toledo. Okay. In order to do that, I need to be built up here. Yeah. And then get launched out.
Was that the vision beforehand that you felt like God was giving you?
I don't think anything.
At some point, but you knew you had to get further training, discipleship, and learning?
Probably. I don't think I was really aware of it until I started to study under Pastor Glass, really started to get discipled and mentored by him, still getting mentored by Darnell, and I was starting to get prepared for that. Okay. So I don't really think I had ideas. Oh, you're called to be a pastor. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. I thought I had some other plans, but if that's what God has planned, then I guess here we go. But most people don't know, like, I have to tell people, like, I didn't come out the womb wanting to be a pastor. I didn't want to be a pastor growing up. I didn't want to be a pastor in the first college.
Most true pastors aren't. They're desiring to be the shepherd of people's souls, and to lead people.
And I think people see me going so hard for it nowadays that they assume like, oh, he just really want to do that. No, that's just what God's called me to do. But I wanted to be a lawyer first. Before a lawyer, I wanted to be a math teacher. And at some point I wanted to, maybe I'll go to the Olympics or something like that. I had all this, pastor was nowhere near, it wasn't even on the list. I was gonna say near the top, wasn't even on the list. So then that's why when he started explaining to me, I was like, okay, so what do we do now? Because this is something I've not been thinking about or planning for. Yeah. So eventually I got a job.
Can I pause you real quick?
Yeah.
What was it, Darnell and your pastor that called out, hey, I would see you as a pastor? Was it them that identified that calling on your life, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I would say it was both of them. Because at one point I started preaching at Impact. I think the first time I ever preached was actually December of my junior year.
What's Impact for those who may not know?
Okay, so Impact is a Christian organization I feel like is more so catered to African Americans, but with the aspect that believe that all people are from Africa. But it was birthed out of a crew, so Campus Crusades for Christ, and his main goal was to reach, again, a lot of minorities. Okay. So they have different chapters all over the nation at different colleges, just like
Impact or crew?
Both of them. Okay. Yeah, both of them do. So I'll say I preached my first sermon like my junior year summer at my church I grew up in, and then when I came back, maybe that senior year, I started preaching on campus a little bit more at Impact, maybe once or twice. And Pastor Glasser came to one of my sermons, so I preached. So I think the first time he came, he said, yo, you need to get on my schedule, so let's meet. For whatever reason, I didn't. Or I think he told me before I preached that sermon, then he told me again after that. So then I finally did it. And then that's when we started meeting, and that's when he started, telling me these things and pouring into me. And that's when this was revealed. So it's just like, boom, here's this calling on your life. I was like, oh.
So how'd you get, I know I'm backing up here, but how did you get into like preaching back at home and through Impact? Did they ask you, did you volunteer, or like how did that happen? If briefly, if you don't mind explaining that.
So yeah, I've never actually asked anyone, can I preach this or that? It's always been like opportunities given to me. So I think my uncle, who was the pastor at that church, saw me kind of growing in my relationship and my walk with God. Okay. So when he asked me, it was like for Youth Day. So I think, it was Youth Day. I was a youth. He saw me living and going on fire, so he asked me. So that was like my very first time ever preaching was at that church, and then told Darnell about it. And then I was going, I think Darnell, then he offered me opportunity to preach. So just getting opportunities to preach on impacts, you know, leading Bible studies, so leading those lessons before. So I've been leading small groups, so I kind of already learned a little bit how to do these lessons or how to preach and teach. And then, you know, just continue getting opportunities to preach on campus as I served, teach if we're having retreats or conferences and stuff like that. So I've, you know, taught at a few impact conferences or retreats, whether we had them there at Kent State or we had I remember one we did in like Indiana, and I taught there as well too. So I just kind of getting brought up that way, and then eventually Pastor Glass, you know, allowed me to start preaching at church. So I, you know, I had my first sermon too there. I didn't actually get ordained until 2019.
Okay.
So that's how that kind of happened.
Ordained as what?
As a minister.
Minister? Okay.
Yeah, good question. I'm sorry. Yeah, I got ordained as a minister. I got licensed maybe a little bit later in 2021 because that's when I actually performed my first wedding.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, so I got ordained then. But before then, you know, I'm preaching whenever Pastor Glass allows me to, preaching on campus. But also, like, we're meeting one-on-one. I'm doing, you know, serving at my church a lot, too, as well. So I just ended up getting a job that kept me in the area. I was working as an electronic monitoring technician. Fancy way of saying I was putting the bracelets on people when they're on house arrest. Doing that.
Was this your first job or career after college?
Yeah.
While you were still...
I had worked at this factory for one day, but then I went on vacation with somebody, so then I didn't have that job.
So, one day.
And then I started working at the Oriental House, doing that. And so that was my legit first job, legit first career. I stayed there.
What type of occupation was that? You don't have to explain exactly what it was.
Corrections, essentially.
Corrections,
yeah.
okay.
Which is, I'll say, an umbrella under justice studies.
Okay.
Or criminal justice, rather.
So you got your degree in criminal justice and...
Yep, minor. So major was justice studies with a minor in pre-law.
Okay, gotcha.
I originally wanted to become a lawyer.
Okay.
So then I started working there. Then I eventually got a promotion to a caseworker.
Okay.
And then from caseworker, we'll go a little bit later on, but after that, Mary came back from marriage. Then I got a promotion. I went back to the EM facility. So I went from EM to halfway house as a caseworker to EM as a caseworker.
EM, is that what, emergency?
Electronic monitoring.
Okay.
Yeah, so EM, electronic monitoring.
And then electronic monitoring, got you.
And then I went to worked in the men's halfway house.
Okay.
Went back to EM, and then I went to juvenile probation.
So during this time where you were transitioning in different jobs and careers, you know, how was, you know, Jesus like operating in your life? Like why did you feel like you were, I guess, bouncing around? Like what was that about?
Honestly, so the one I just wanted more money. So when I was in the EM, the position was open, and I had a degree, so I was like, why not? And then from there, I was enjoying the halfway house. I got brought back. So at this time, I'm just looking to see how I can provide for myself at the time.
Yeah.
Looking to get more money, and then eventually it became, okay, how can I get a better position to provide more as a husband? Because later on, I got married, and so I was married before I became a juvenile probation officer. So obviously I took that position and moved up the change and stuff like that. So
wait, that makes sense. Just trying to position yourself better financially, occupation, be more stable.
Yes.
What years was this approximately, and when did you end up getting married?
We got married in 2017.
2017? Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Got you. All right. So, you know, you were still training and, you know, training to be a pastor, be a minister. You were ordained at this time? No.
I wasn't ordained until 2019.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Yep.
So this is around like 2017-ish or so, right? You were defining career. So from right there, you said you got married. So in your marriage, after you did you settle in on one type of career for a little bit, or were you still bouncing around, or what was that like?
So when I got married in 2017, I was still a caseworker, so I was settled around there. So no, I still bounced. So we got married. I went from caseworker from the one facility, a caseworker at EM. Okay. Did that for about a year, then in probation, because I was trying to become a probation officer, because that's where more money was at. Yeah. And again, I feel like my first priority, in some instances, I was trying to operate as like, I feel like a man should. My first priority is at home, so I need more money to take care of me and my wife, and so we can just live. And also I was like, well, the more I make, the more I can tithe. So that position, so I wanted essentially to get to federal probation. I really wanted to get to adult probation, but I was like, okay, I need some experience first. Yeah. So okay, juvenile probation, give me some experience so I can go to adults or get in with the feds. Because I actually had an interview for adult, but I probably messed that up because I got into an argument with someone and I dogged them out bad one time.
You don't need to go down that.
No, it was funny. It was in my immaturity in a younger time. But so yeah, I took that position, and I was in juvenile probation for probably about 3 years. Okay. Before I did eventually move to adult probation and then move to some other positions, but those the position after adult probation happened after the marriage ended and whatnot.
Gotcha.
So it's a little bit, again, just trying to figure out how I can move up to get to a federal position. Because in the criminal justice field, the positions I pay, if you don't go FBI, CIA, state agency like Homeland Security, DEA or something like that, it's hard to make money, decent living wage. I feel like just working in a county or a city, because counties don't pay that well for local probation and stuff like that until you get to like maybe a supervisor or something like that.
Okay. So during this time, you know, you try to figure out being more financially stable, you know, providing, you know, but while you're working with the juveniles and the corrections, how would you see God working in your life, in your job?
Okay, so perfect. So I was still serving on campus at that time. Okay. So I was still discipling men. I was still serving at Impacts. Like I would be at the Tuesday meetings when I could, preaching when Darnell would offer like, hey, I'm gonna have you go on this day or that day. All right, cool. Still leading small groups. Okay. Still leading a small group Bible study. And then like when I would get the opportunity at my job, I would try and share Christ. So if in my mind, I'm like, if I can share a scripture, share my testimony, or share the gospel, then that's how I can do this at my job too. Yeah. So then my thing is like, I'm doing it at my job when I get little opportunities, two little windows, little slits here and there. Yeah. But then I'm also doing it outside of this. Right. So to me, what happened is like, I didn't want to wait till I become officially a pastor down the road. I'm like, okay, now let's take ministry seriously. Like, no, if I'm serious about it, then I'm about it right now.
Yeah, and every aspects of your life. You want to share the good news of Jesus to everybody, right?
Right. It's like, why give 8 hours to some company, but then to give nothing to God after I get off?
That's real.
Right. So it's just like, because what else was I gonna do? Either go to the gym, which I would work out, but then after that, what am I doing at home?
Yeah. Wow.
Nothing.
Yeah, it's like when Jesus told the disciples, you know, in Matthew 28, after his ascension and after his resurrection, he's about to ascend to the Father. He told them, go out into all the nations and spread the gospel, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Yeah, obviously, you know, you have to be a pastor, and there's an order to do that, but us taking the gospel and telling people about the kingdom of God and Jesus and salvation and all that, that's something that we can do in our everyday lives, which is something I try to do as well. That's important to us. Like you said, you know, we work in, but how are we going to also serve God if we give in 8-9 hours to his company, right? So what are we doing for fishing for men, you know?
And because of what Darnell did to me and how it changed my life, I wanted to change another man's life like that. And I say another man, not that I couldn't do it for a woman, but I personally didn't want to try to disciple women. That can get messy when I feel like when a man's discipling a woman or a woman discipling a man. I
can see that.
Boundaries can cross, but I'm like, okay, I'm good with men. Right. And somehow men flock to me. So like, let's continue with this.
Were you making an impact with, you know, were you able to build relationships with anybody, or did you see anybody come to Christ, or either at the job?
For sure.
Were they open to?
So in the job, sometimes if I got an opportunity to pray with somebody, I would take it. I would say seeds were planted, and then I don't know how God watered it later on. Right. I saw more fruit, honestly, doing stuff on campus with the men I was discipling. Okay. And then I think what was the fruit of it for me is to see somebody I disciple start discipling somebody else. Yeah. That was just like the aha moment. You got it. That's what got me geeked and excited.
You know, I think that makes sense, because that's, I think, when I had met you in like 2016-ish. I had moved from Michigan to work at Kent State University, and I wanted to get plugged in with, you know, the Christians on campus, and one way or another I found about Impact, and I think that's when I had met you. Yep. And Darnell, and a couple other people as well. You know, Cordell, shout out to Cordell if he's watching. You know, and a couple other people as well. So yeah, that makes sense. So you was graduated, but you're still serving Impact and discipling. And
so actually, I was still serving with Impact and Voices of Testimony. Okay. So I would like still be in the concerts. I'll be, you know, directing here or there. So my brother Jonathan Turner was like the main director. So I would be helping behind the scenes and stuff like that, still singing. So they would perform, I would go, stuff like that. So I was still heavily involved in ministry on campus. And then I would still do stuff at the church too. Okay. So we'll kind of talk about later on how that kind of had a negative impact, because I was doing a little too much. So I didn't change, like when I was undergrad, doing a whole bunch of stuff. Didn't really change, just the stuff that I was doing changed, but I didn't actually change my mindset.
Right, that makes sense. So let's get into that a little bit more. Izzy, okay. You were serving, you were on fire for Christ. You know, you were planting seeds and, you know, just really living out the gospel, right? Putting your faith into action and sowing seeds into, you know, men's lives and, you know, sharing the good news of Jesus, right? But you were also, tell me about your relationship at the time. You know, let's get into that. You know, I know you were doing a lot. You were managing your career, figuring that out, but then also balancing, you know, your personal relationship, right? So Let's start for the beginning. You know, how did y'all meet? You know, at this time you were, I know y'all been together for a little bit at this time, but in undergrad you were still, you know, kind of, like I said, sowing your oats, but you know, you're having a little fun, right?
For sure.
So how did you meet your then wife or then girlfriend, and then later fiance, then wife, and then, you know, your ex-wife? So
for sure.